All right. I'm super excited and honored to have John Macaskill here on the Move Happy Movement podcast and vlog. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Erin, for having me.
Absolutely. For those that don't know your background, I know you're retired from the Navy as a Navy SEAL. You also are really into mindfulness, which really stood out for me. Why don't we talk a little bit about your origin story? Let's get to know you before you became what you are today.
I love the origin story. It kind of makes me feel like a superhero of some sort.
You
But
are.
yeah, let's see. So, born in South Africa, raised in Louisiana, have three older sisters and a younger brother. And growing up in northern Louisiana, I was part of a fairly small, tight-knit running team, track and cross country, and we did absolutely everything together. And I felt that when I left high school, I wanted to be part of something small, something fairly elite, because we were a very good team. And special operations jumped out at me, and then specifically the Navy jumped out at me because we used to spend our summer vacations down at the beach down in the Gulf Coast. So I fell in love with the water. So the Navy SEALs jumped out at me even more. So I started looking towards doing that, try to get into the Naval Academy out of high school, got turned down, but decided,
Really?
you know what? Yeah, I did.
Oh.
Got turned down, then stayed with it though. I enlisted in the Navy from that and did a year, and then ended up getting picked up for the Naval Academy from the enlisted ranks, and then did my 4 years there. Graduated with a degree in mathematics, and then went out to SEAL training in 2001. Was there when the World Trade Center and the Pentagon were attacked on 9/11, and the world got flipped upside down, right?
Yeah, no
And
kidding.
yeah, so from there, ended up going into the SEAL teams finally, and was officially pinned a Navy SEAL in 2003. And then went on and did my work from then until last year. I retired in August of last year. So that's kind of the military background.
Yeah.
I'm married. I was married before, divorced, remarried. Now I've got two young kids, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and we are living out in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
That is,
And,
wow, busy 4 and a
yeah.
2-year-old. That's awesome.
And another one on the way.
Yeah, congratulations
Yeah, thank you.
for all of that. Let's talk a little bit about 9/11 and your couple years in the military at that point. What was it like?
Right.
What was the atmosphere like?
There was I mean, this is going to sound terrible, but there was almost like a level of excitement. Hey, because we were in the armed forces and we wanted to go and defend the country against this attack. So there was like, hey, let me at them kind of attitude, right?
Yeah. Sense of
Then there was
honor.
also, yeah, exactly. There was also an anxiety about what had happened and where we were going to go as a country. So there was a kind of an interesting cocktail of emotions being in the military at the time. And I mean, those same emotions are still going on today. Here we are 20 years later. In September, it's 20 years. I can't believe that.
It's
But
incredible.
yeah. So
wow. Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about, so I know you're a mindfulness instructor. What amount, if any, did they actually train on mindfulness while you were active duty? Did you learn from your military experience, or like how did that come into play?
yeah, there wasn't any formal meditation or mindfulness in the military at the time for us. I mean, there was times when people were there's really no way other than being mindful. When you're going through some of the training, you have to be present, you have to be aware of what's going on. But I definitely had that training honed years later after dealing with some depression and anxiety after what I'd seen and been exposed to. And the treatment that I was advised to seek was actually mindfulness meditation. That was after trying different forms of medication. I eventually got introduced to meditation, and meditation is what I attribute to saving my life. And then after it saved my life, I was able to share it with some friends. and I saw what it was doing in their lives.
Yeah.
And then we ended up having small groups that we were meditating with. And I realized, you know what, this is something that I could do for a living.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
sure, it's nice that I know I can put some food on the table for my kids. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm also retired military, so that's helpful, right?
Right.
I get a pension, but knowing that I can do what serves my purpose as my profession is nice. So my
Mhm.
purpose is helping others live their most fulfilled lives.
Mhm.
And I can do that through mindfulness and meditation, help them live happier, healthier, more fulfilled lives. And then on top of that, if I can get paid for it, that's great. But most
Yeah.
importantly, in my eyes, is that they hear the message, they hear what these practices can do, and
Mhm.
then they go out and they learn these practices and start working that into their lives on their own,
Mhm.
so they can again be happier and healthier, more fulfilled.
Yeah, I love that. And that's very much, part of my mission as well, which is, there's a lot of alignment there. It's interesting that you mentioned, about being, that was kind of what was suggested to you after medications and whatnot. And I'm totally supportive of medications. If you need to
Oh
take them,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
totally great. Cross
right.
multimodal or whatever that word is.
Modality. Yeah.
Getting what you need, whether it's medication, alternative practices, whatnot. I worked briefly with the Army and Air Force, and they did, I was like an outsider, contractor. And we did, they didn't call it meditation, but it was like resiliency training, and like used a
Mm-hmm.
lot of buzzwords. It wasn't actually talking about what we were doing. But I
Right.
feel like now there's been a shift to where now it's like more acceptable to talk about meditation as its actual language or term. Do you feel like there's something like that going on as well? Or am I
Oh
totally,
yeah. No,
yeah,
no, no, absolutely. You're spot on. And I'm thankful that there is that shift,
yeah.
because it needs to happen, because I was a skeptic myself
Mm-hmm.
as I was introduced to the practices. I
Yeah.
pushed back against the counselor who recommended it, because I thought I was this big, bad, hairy, scary Navy SEAL. I
Right,
don't know if
right.
I was ever really big, bad, and hairy, scary, but in my mind, I pictured myself as that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so when he presented what I kind of perceived as woo-woo practices,
Yes.
I thought, you know what, I'm not going to do this. But then he presented it. He changed his framing of
Mm-hmm.
mindfulness and meditation. And he said, look at this list of very high performing individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And, showed me like 10 or 15 people. And he's like, guess what they all have in common.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know where he was going with it, but
Yeah,
hey,
street cred.
yeah, right, exactly. So it offered that street cred.
Mm-hmm.
And once I saw that, I was like, okay, well, I'm always looking for an edge, a performance enhancing edge.
Yeah.
And if mindfulness and meditation can do that, then I'll try it out.
Mm-hmm.
And so my original intent was not to really help the depression and the anxiety. I thought, okay, well, yeah, if that comes, then that's great. But really, what I want to do is perform better.
Yeah.
And I did. I performed better. And then on top of it, I started feeling better. I started being
Yeah.
more like aware of what was going on around me, and not just at work, but in life as a
Mm-hmm.
whole. I was seeing the good things in life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt, you know what, this is such an easy thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's easy, and really the difficult part is scheduling it and getting it
Yeah.
worked into your life, and then getting through the first few weeks,
Yeah.
maybe 2 months even of practice, and then you start to see the difference. It's much like going to the gym, right? You go to the gym one time,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, okay,
It
that felt
doesn't
good in the
work.
moment. Yeah, right. That felt good in the moment, but how come I'm not looking all lean and great?
Yeah.
And even in the moment, like the first time you're doing curls in the mirror, you're like, all right, I'm making some progress. And then you walk out of the gym, and then your arms kind of shrink.
Right.
It's kind of the same thing with meditation, is that you do get an immediate sense of relief. But
Mm-hmm.
then as soon as you're introduced to a stressful situation again, then you kind of go out of that.
Yeah.
But the long-term effects, just like the long-term effects of the gym, they come in and they stay with you
Mm-hmm.
as long as you're continuing to practice over about 2 months. That's
Yeah.
when I started to see those practices. So yeah, there's definitely been a shift, and I'm so glad to see it. And hopefully I can be a part of continuing to push that shift and change that mindset around these practices, because they are so important, and they're
Yeah.
life changing.
100%. And when you were doing your initial training, is it the same amount of meditation that you do now? Do you do more or less, or?
Yeah. Well, I have a routine that is somewhat routine. So I try to do 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes after lunch.
Cool.
But I've also started experimenting with new meditation apps, and I'm doing an hour in the morning now. But
Nice.
that's new. How I started was I tried to jump into an hour-long meditation day one. That
Yeah,
was a
how'd that
huge
go?
mistake. Not well. It didn't
No,
go well
not
at
so
all.
good.
No. So I backed off and I started doing, like 5-minute breathing practices, just some simple box breathing, and realized that could change how I felt about things, how I felt in the moment. And then I started, gradually getting more in depth and into longer meditations.
Yeah.
And then I went through some meditation courses, some mindfulness-based stress reduction courses that were offered by the University of Massachusetts.
Nice.
And some other ones that were offered by some other institutions and organizations. And as I did that, that foundation was built, and gradually it got more and more. And then the practice of meditation itself became easier to me, because a lot of the time you sit down for the first time to meditate and your mind wanders off, and then you tell yourself, I can't meditate. I'm one of those people who has a mind that's too busy, that goes all over the place. Well, everybody can meditate. It just takes time. Just like everybody can get into the gym.
Yeah.
Just like everybody who is physically able can run. It just takes some time to get those legs under you, or take some time to get those neural pathways developed in your brain to kind of calm your mind, so that you can get further into that meditation, deeper into that meditation, and then you can do the longer meditations as well.
Yeah, I believe that 100%. And I love that you mentioned you tried for an hour and you were like, no, this isn't working. Because that's the same thing, right? With many people that go to the gym January 1st, they're like, I'm going to lose 100 pounds. It's going to happen in 30 days. And then they get injured and then they quit. So it's very similar to that. You don't have to be all or nothing. It's like, start with a little bit and add a little bit more each day. So thank you for that authenticity. And I really feel like that speaks to those that might be interested or have high stress positions where they need to, be able to get their mind focused at certain times. What are some tips, some strategies for keeping their minds in a positive space that you've learned, or, that you can share from your experiences?
Well, I mean, the practice of meditation is that's the first thing, and setting yourself up so that you can do it. Set yourself up for success so that you can do it regularly. Yeah. So, if that is in the morning, if it's after lunch, or if it's, before you go to bed, I personally like to do it in the morning because it gets my mind right before I go into the day.
Yeah, me too.
So the meditation is definitely a piece of it. But then the mindfulness, so meditation is a practice. Mindfulness is a way of being. Mindfulness is being present, being in the here and now, paying attention to what is happening, intentionally paying attention to what is happening right here, right now, without judgment, paying attention to what it is you're experiencing physically, what it is you're experiencing emotionally, spiritually. So that's mindfulness. And that way of being can be reinforced by the meditation practice. And so they complement one another. And as you're going through your day and you're starting to get stressed out, if you just bring your attention to the here and now, and you realize, what, I'm stressed because I'm thinking about the future, something that's going to happen in the future, something that I need to do in the future, something that I'm behind on, that I need to catch up on in order to meet this deadline. Or you're traveling back in time, you start thinking about something that you screwed up yesterday, something that could have been better, should have been better. Yeah. And then you start getting depressed. So that's the stress and anxiety kind of battle that you have going on, and depression as well. So that what I recommend is bringing yourself into the here and now, living mindfully. And then if you need to implement some mindfulness practices, that's when I say mindfulness practice, it's kind of the overlap between the meditation and the mindfulness. That's where you intentionally stop, take some time, bring yourself into the here and now, and then potentially even take some very quiet time, close your eyes, take some time, focus on your breathing, bring your attention to the physical sensations that are involved with living. And by doing that, you tune out all that other noise. So you tune out the noise of the future, you tune out the noise of the past. Sure, that's going to come back in, but then you can get refocused in a mindfulness exercise, and that is going to help to really bring those stress levels down. So a simple one is just breathing, box breathing. It's called box breathing because if you can kind of imagine what a box looks like, it's got 4 sides, right? So breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, and you do that 4 times. That's really gonna tap into the vagus nerve. Vagus nerve activates the parasympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic nervous system brings your heart rate down, brings your respiratory rate down, brings your blood pressure down. I mean, that's why a lot of the time when you go and get your vitals checked at the doctor, they're like, okay, yeah, your blood pressure is a little high. Just sit here for 2 more minutes and just breathe, just relax. And then they take it later and your blood pressure is down. That's because your parasympathetic nervous system has been activated. And that's the opposite of the sympathetic, which is the fight, flight, or freeze nervous system, which is why so many of us feel so stressed out all the time, because little things are perceived as threats. So our body is in this constant fight or flight or freeze state, and we're wearing ourselves out, kind of like a race car that's always in the red. Eventually we're going to break down. So I recommend just setting yourself up for success by practicing meditation, living mindfully, and then just breathing, taking those breathing breaks every once in a while.
Yeah, those are excellent tips. I remember just teaching like fitness back in the day, and so many of the like just breathe, just relax and breathe. You got to breathe through your repetitions, and you're good to go. So great tips. No, as far as our second pillar of happy is about building strong communities. We know that that's a huge factor in our happiness. And on the other end, if we're not connecting with people, it could really affect our level of depression and mental health. What are some tips, strategies you've learned either from your military experience or through meditation groups or whatnot? How have you connected with other men, other women to really help with your social health?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question right now, right? In the pandemic, we had a lot of networks that faltered because they were reliant on in-person communication. And then the flip side of things is that in society as a whole, we've gotten more connected digitally. Even prior to the pandemic, we were more connected digitally, but less connected as a whole, like real depth, right? So one thing that is very easy in the military is you have a network that's kind of automatically in place. You move from one place to another and you get automatically put into a new unit, and you're connected with that unit, right? So you have people to hang out with, people to have barbecues with, people to go to church with, and that kind of thing. As what I do recommend is that in this day and age, you have to be very intentional about setting up a support network, setting up a social network. And when I say social network, I'm not talking Facebook, I'm talking about in person, right? So reaching out to organizations that you can be a part of, that you can volunteer within, that you can attend churches, and I'm not talking about religion here. I'm just talking about the fellowship that exists in an organization like a church, right? So if you feel so inclined, go to a church. If church isn't your thing, volunteer with a nonprofit. There's tons of them that are out there, or there's activity groups that are online that end up getting together to go hiking or biking or whatever. But having something that is a social outlet that, one, it's fun, but two, they're also there to support you when you need them. And then three, you can support them when they need it. And that giving back, often, sure, there's an altruistic part in it. Hey, you want to give back for nothing in return. But that there is quite often kind of a byproduct of giving back with no intent of getting anything in return. You do get something in return. By giving back, you feel a sense of purpose, you feel a sense of giving to others, and that's helpful. So I think that's what I would recommend, is being very intentional about setting up something. You can't just fall into place and assume that this network's going to come to you. Reach out, meet new people, and get comfortable being uncomfortable.
So true. Great tips. Third pillar, all about movement. It started from a place where I created a program in a psych hospital. We had zero budget, like $100 to split between 15 staff. So with that in mind, what are some of your favorite ways? I know you mentioned running as a younger adult. Is that your favorite way to move your body, or do you have something new nowadays?
No, it is no longer my favorite way. I still run. But I'm a lot heavier and older than I was, so it hurts a little bit more. So I like getting on the bike and getting out on a bike, be that a road bike or a mountain bike. And I love hiking, just getting out into nature, both for sure the physical aspect of it, but also the emotional and mental aspect of it that comes with seeing so much of what this world has to offer, the beauty that's there. If it's, the beautiful changing of the leaves in the fall, or the new growth in the spring, or just being out there listening to the sounds and seeing the water running through the mountains, that kind of thing. So that I would say is probably my favorite, is getting out and hiking and just seeing nature in its truest form.
I love that. And that's very mindful too.
Yeah, it is. It is. As a matter of fact, right after this, I'm going to be talking to a group about getting outdoors more often, so that you can be more mindful and detaching from these things more often.
I love it. That's awesome. Awesome. Well, I always love to close out the show with, a random question. I actually pulled some questions from the audience. So here's one from one of our guests from Facebook. Charles Phillips asked, how accurate are TV and movie portrayals of what you did as a Navy SEAL, and I think he meant what you were capable of. So how accurate was that?
Well, I don't want to ruin the myths and beliefs that are out there. So 100%, it's all true. No, funny enough, I went home a couple of weeks ago, and my sister asked me a similar question. She's known me, my whole life, right? She's known me my whole military career, and never really asked me about that. And we sat down and watched. I think it's called Navy SEALs, or maybe SEAL Team. It's some TV show based on Navy SEALs.
Okay.
And I was actually surprised that how accurate it was in the way the guys, like some movies portray Navy SEALs as just invincible. This show didn't do that. It showed them as human beings. I mean, they're a bunch of tough guys, and that's true, right? There's definitely the tough mentality. They're tough physically and emotionally. But then when you get them off the battlefield, they're human beings. So I would say that, depending on the movie, depending on the show, there's inaccuracies and accuracies. But funny thing is that most of the time when people meet real SEALs, they're surprised at, I guess, their way of being. There's a confidence, but normally not so much of an arrogance. Sometimes in the movies, the Navy SEALs are a little bit arrogant, a little bit cocky. I think there's a confidence there, but not so much the cockiness or arrogance. And then again, it depends on the movie that you're watching, but we're not invincible.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much. I'd love to ask you to close out the show with any words of wisdom or inspiration for our listeners.
Yeah, sure. I'm working on a couple of keynote speeches, and one of them is talking about leadership and what a good leader is made up of. And I would say that a good leader has 4 traits that every good leader has in common. And I would say that's preparedness, resilience, grit, and compassion. And if you are a leader and you are lacking in any of those or are looking for ways to improve,
Mhm.
I think read books on those, watch movies on them, watch TED Talks on them.
Yeah.
But those are the four things that I think you need to have and continually maintain and cultivate as a good leader. So that's what I guess what I would leave you with for the day
I
as
love
far as
that.
wisdom.
Yeah, I love that. And if people want to connect with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Right now, I'm working on my website, but I have a rebranded link tree, and that's just jonmacaskill.com. So Jon Macaskill is Macaskill, jonmacaskill.com/links. So if you just go to jonmacaskill.com, it won't show up because that's in under construction. But jonmacaskill.com/links, that has all the different things that I'm working on. It has my email and it has my social media handles.
Awesome. And who are the kinds of people you want to most work with? If you could pick your dream clients.
My dream clients, really anyone in need of really identifying a new way of living, a new purpose, or are struggling and finding fulfillment. I don't want to categorize that in any particular industry or any type of specific job. I would just say anyone who is looking to find fulfillment, then I can help to at least point you in the right direction. I may not get you there myself, but I can point you in the right direction.
Love that. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Jon. This has been super fun.
My pleasure. All right.
All right.